It's time for Venom vs. Toxin. Oh boy, have I been waiting for this. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues of your favorite comic books, and I break them down into digestible bites before I add some weird music and I throw in some funny voices and read them dramatically back to you to assist you in a recap. All alterations to the panel text and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Now, if you're just now joining us for the Venom storylines, the Venom symbiote was mostly lobotomized and then placed onto Flash Thompson, and he became Agent Venom. He has slowly but surely been fighting against the Venom symbiote because the more that he wears it, the more that he loses control of it, so Venom and Flash are basically two different people. On top of all of this, they now have a symbol on them that is allowing a demon to take over them as well. Now, in our last video, Flash left for Philly to take on the UFOs who came across a strange technology and they were using it on the people in the city. With the help of Valkyrie, Flash managed to bring down the UFOs and rescue Flash's new girlfriend, Katie, in the process. But not long after that fight, he was sulking because he was back to being alone. And during that time, Eddie Brock was planning his triumphant return. With everything that was happening in Flash's life, he decided that it might be best to have a different view on the world and move to Philadelphia. But as the movers finished dropping off the last of his boxes, he begins to hear one of his new neighbors shout for them to keep it down. He heads out to tell the neighbor that he's sorry he had just moved in, but the man doesn't care. He just needs to get some sleep because some people work at night. As the man slams his door shut, Flash says that it's good to meet him too. And then a girl's voice asks if he's the new guy. Flash looks back and the girl tells him not to worry about Mr. Fricks over there. He's normally yelling about not getting to work on time, which he never does anyway. Flash tells her thanks for the tip, and then he asks if she goes to West Philly because he just got hired at the PE department. The girl looks at him and tells him, whatever, she's got places to be. And in response to that, Flash tells himself, look at that, I'm making friends already. As the night begins to fall in the city, it's time for Flash to go out and do some good around the town. Because that's what honest-to-goodness superheroes do. They patrol the streets and they stop crime, which is still boring as hell. As the patrol goes on, Flash spots a man who left a bar after a woman had turned him down. As the woman walks down past the corner, she sees Flash hanging there with the man, telling her that she might want to make it home quick. After swinging and dropping the man off, Flash lets Venom take over to scare the man for a bit. And he tells him that if he wants to live, he's gonna go turn himself in. And if he catches him out here again, well, you know. The man runs off screaming for the police, and the Venom just says, nom nom nom. A little while later, off in another alley, a street gang corners a young boy, telling him that his cousin runs for them. There ain't nothing changing that. And the boy Rafe says that his cousin Enzo can do whatever he wants, but he himself does not want to join their little gang. The gang leader says that no one said that he could even join them, but they're both still going to work for them. Members of the gang begin to grab onto Rafe, and as the leader grabs Enzo, a shadow begins to float behind them. A voice calls out, "That's enough!" The chains then begin whipping around, knocking all of the thugs down, and the figure appears before them, telling them that her name is Hail Mary, the Mother Superior of Punishment. All of the thugs look at her, and then they begin to run. Once alone, Flash begins to revert back into his Venom suit, laughing that that was a good one. And the next morning he wakes up to look at the medicine the Beast has been giving him to help him keep the symbiote in check and under control. As Flash puts the needle down, he tells himself that he won't use this unless he needs to. So far he's been able to control Venom with very little problems, and now it's time to finally get some rest. A little while later, he wakes up from his nap with the sounds of a knock on his door. He hurries and answers it, and two police officers state that they're sorry for waking him up so early, but they wanted to ask if he had heard any disturbances in the last couple of hours. Flash tells them no. Seems like he's a pretty heavy sleeper. The officers tell him that it seems like his neighbor Robert Fricks has been the victim of a home invasion and he's been hospitalized, and it might be a while before he regains consciousness. Flash responds with he's sorry he couldn't be of any help to them, and then he asks himself if he did that. And then he says that he already knows the answer to that. Meanwhile, back in New York at Flash's old apartment, a man knocks on the door asking for Flash to hurry and open up. An older woman walks by stating that Flash has started a new job over in Philadelphia, so he's not there anymore. And the man pulls down his hood. And Eddie Brock says, "Oh, that's too bad. I just hate it when Flash skips town like that." After getting cleaned up, Flash gets ready to start his first day of work, but before leaving he tries to call Katie since she's the only real friend that he has left these days. But just as the many times before, it goes right to voicemail. Before leaving, Flash grabs Beast's medicine to bring with him just in case. Even with what happened to Mr. Fricks, he still feels like he's in control and hungover even though he hasn't had a drink in a long time. Later at West Philadelphia High, Coach Yates introduces Flash as a new assistant coach joining their staff. One of the kids whispers what's he supposed to coach, the Special Olympics? And Coach Yates tells them that he expects them all to show Coach Thompson here the same respect that they show him. Yates then blows the whistle to run drills, and as the students run, Flash notices one of the boys that he rescued the other night. As he looks around around, he then sees the girl from his apartment and he says hello, though he never caught her name. She says that her name is Andy and knows she will not be dressing up for PE today. As the day ends, Flash heads back to his other job, being a superhero patrolling the streets of Philly. And while out, he notices one strange man and decides to keep watch on him. The hunchback man heads into an apartment building, grumbling to himself as he takes off his overcoat, showing 4 canisters on his back. He then begins eating the dog food that he brought, stating that he's just so hungry, but this isn't working. He walks to the tied-up family, telling them that he's sorry, please forgive him. And suddenly Flash jumps down, tackling the man, telling him that he should give the family a little space. Flash tells the family to hang on so he can get him out of there, and the man says that he can't do that, he needs them. Flash pulls out his gun, and the man's body begins to rip and tear, exposing metal limbs, and he pins Flash down, telling him that he's so sorry for this. But before the man can bite into Flash, Venom's tendrils reach out, pulling the man off of him, and Flash tells him, I think I know a thing or two about being hungry myself. I just gotta keep it in check. Flash then rolls to grab his gun and he aims it back at the man, but the man is already gone. Outside, the man walks through the streets looking for something to eat, and then he spots another man sitting in an alley. He tells himself that they have something in common, they've both made mistakes, and Eddie Brock turns, stating, I was tracking a friend, but it seems like his stink is all over you. And then Toxin takes over, another symbiote, and he says, it seems like we both picked the wrong guy, ha! Toxin grabs onto the man and he throws him to the side, and as the man lands, the canisters on his back begin to wind up. More skin tears away, and he says, he doesn't want to kill the man, but they won't let him stop. Toxin tells him, that's good for whoever that is, because I want to fight. The man lunges at Toxin and Toxin punches him away. He then gets back up, jumping away, ripping Toxin off of Eddie, telling him that they can't be stopped. The adaptation matrix is in their blood. Toxin grabs onto one of the man's mechanical arms and tears it off, and then he holds him up over his head. Toxin says, I'm just gonna get one more freak off the streets. And the man's stomach begins to twist and turn, and 2 metal spikes shoot out of him, and they wrap around, stabbing Toxin in the chest. Toxin throws the man off, telling himself, I've gotta go heal now. And as Toxin struggles to heal, he looks back to see the man gone and shouts, you better run! Now it's time to get back to the bait hook. With the sun rising, Flash heads back to his apartment to speak with Beast regarding the man that he ran into the other night. Flash tells him that he thinks the man is infected with something, some kind of alien technology. Beast says, looking over the reports from the encounter with the UFOs, it's possible that he could have been infected by them. Though it's a long shot, they may be able to help him. That is, if the man can be brought to them. Flash tells him that he just needs to catch a flesh-eating monster and bring him back. No problem. He'll get right on that. Later that night, back at the local kennel, the last worker begins to hear the dogs barking at something. As she walks to go check on them, she sees blood everywhere, and the man looks up, stating, I'm sorry, I had to feed. He then looks at the woman and says, I still have to feed, and he chases after her. As the woman runs outside, the man follows close behind, and then he stops as Flash webs him up and throws him into a car. The Venom suit starts to assemble his gun, and Flash tells him that he doesn't want to shoot him. He can help if he lets him. And the man says, I may want your help, but it's too late. Flash fully webs up the man, stating, fine, call my bluff for not shooting you. And as Flash stares, he begins to wonder if killing him would be. But then Toxin's voice tells him, mercy killing? From the shadows, Toxin jumps out, stating, I think the man should be put out of his misery, so I'll take care of him, and then we can fight! As Toxin gets closer, he slashes away at Flash's chest, ripping through the suit and into Flash Thompson's chest. He then stands over Flash, telling him, you may want to pray now! But Flash whips his arm back, smacking Toxin away. Flash tries to crawl away so he can let the wound heal, but Toxin jumps back onto a car, slamming it down next to him. Toxin rips the car in half and he begins walking towards Flash, and Flash opens fire, but the bullets do nothing against Toxin's skin, and he just laughs. Through the pain, Flash jumps up, kicking Toxin in the head, and just as his foot connects, Toxin thrusts his arm out, stabbing into Flash's head. Flash falls back, unable to see as the blood covers his eyes, and then he hears a screeching yell. Both look up to see the man from before jumping at them, and Toxin quickly stabs into Flash and then stabs through the man. As Toxin pulls back, he holds up the man and he starts to open up his mouth. Flash begins to shout, stop! And then one of Toxin's tendrils whips around, throwing him back to the ground, and Toxin tells him, I admire what you're trying, but you're no hero. Sooner or later, you won't be able to help yourself, and that's when you will die. Toxin widens his mouth and chomp. As the man's body falls to the ground, Toxin turns back, asking, now where were we? Flash jumps forward, letting Venom shoot out, shouting, you didn't have to kill him. A second chomp can be heard, and then one of Toxin's arms flies off. Toxin gets back up, telling him, "Yes, I did!" And he grabs onto Venom's head, and as Venom's tongue whips out and cuts off Toxin's claws, Toxin pulls back screaming, and then he towers over Venom and he bites onto him. Then with one quick jerk, Toxin throws Venom into the air and he begins to regenerate himself. Venom jumps back up and charges back in to continue this battle, but Toxin grabs him by the head and stabs him through the chest. While Toxin is holding Venom's body up, one of Venom's tendrils crawls out with a needle and stabs it into Toxin, the needle that contains the medicine. Toxin throws him down, shouting, "What did you do?" And he slowly begins to retract off of Eddie Brock. Flash, taking over, starts to crawl away, and Eddie shouts, "We're not done. I'm gonna teach you a lesson and show you just how dangerous a monster can be." A little while later, Andy sits on top of her apartment building when she suddenly hears a loud thud. She looks back to see Flash crawling out of the shadows. She runs over to ask what happened, and Flash tells her, I'll be all right. And Andy tells him, "No way, you look like..." But then Flash shouts, telling her, "Leave me alone!" She gets up, telling him sorry for trying to help. Hopefully he doesn't rot up here. And as he lays back down, he tells himself he can't let people get close. That's why he left New York and Betty. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a homeless man kicks over another homeless man, telling him, "You ate the last of the bologna, didn't you?" And as the second man turns back, he sees metal spikes crawling out of his mouth. The homeless man stumbles into another man, but then sees the same thing. The machines start crawling out and affecting new hosts, all reciting that their targets are Venom and Toxin. The next day at school, the students all begin to look at Flash, and he already knows why. The fight with Eddie and Toxin left a nice shiner on his face, and all of the students want to know how it happened. But just as he begins to think about Eddie, he sees Eddie through the crowd at his school full of students. Eddie walks right up to Flash and tells him, "It wasn't very hard to find you. I was a reporter before." Flash tells him that this isn't happening, not here. And Eddie tells him, "This is happening. We will finish what we started. We're gonna walk out there, go somewhere isolated, and end this." Flash looks up asking, "And if I tell you to go screw yourself?" Eddie leans down and tells him, "Then I'll release Toxin right here and now." The two argue whether they're going to fight, but then Eddie smells something. And Flash asks him, "What is it?" Eddie tells him it's oil and blood, chemicals and rot, just like that alien freak from the other night. Suddenly there's a scream and everyone looks back to see more of those infected people grabbing onto the teachers. The students begin to run, but the infected people walk down the hallways, killing anyone that they can grab. Flash looks back at Eddie and asks, "Are we gonna do this? We can't let the students get hurt. And if you want to kill me, fine, but after we save these kids." Flash then starts directing all of the kids into a room, and Andy asks him, "What about you?" And he tells her, "Don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you." As Flash takes off and Venom crawls out, he asks Eddie, "Do we have a deal?" And Eddie tells him, "Fine, we can kill each other later." The infected roam the halls looking for Venom and Toxin jumps in, biting away at one of them. He tells the other infected, "Don't worry, I won't leave you out of this." Venom then starts crawling into the duct while slamming some of the infected around. But as Toxin is left alone, the infected begin ganging up, tearing Toxin down. Just as they're getting ready to kill them, Toxin shouts, "I will kill every last one of you!" And then there's a sound of cracking coming straight towards them as Venom bursts out of the ground shouting for them, "Get off!" Venom gets out and he starts running through the infected, tearing them apart. And once Toxin regenerates, he then jumps in, killing off the remaining stragglers. Venom says, "I saved your hide, huh?" And Toxin asks him, "Are you ready for what's next?" Venom shouts, "Do you really want to do this?" And Toxin tells him, "Yeah, I know what it was like to wear Venom. I couldn't control it." Venom then slowly reverts back into his suit. And Flash tells him, "I can control it. Because I have to." Toxin leans in and tells him, "Okay." And Flash asks, "What?" But Toxin goes on stating, "I'll be watching you. And when you lose control, I will come back and kill you." Flash looks at him and tells him, "If that ever happens, I want you to kill me." Eddie reverts back stating, "It won't be an if, it'll be a when." A little while later, the police arrive and the students are all released from the school. As Flash leaves, a reporter runs over asking what exactly happened in there. And Flash says that he's not sure he has much to say. He was locked away in the supply closet, but he did see some creature. Even though it was brief, it was red and black and covered in something like pasta. But it single-handedly fought off those killer cyborgs or whatever they are and then just took off. It's good knowing that there's someone like that out there and elsewhere in the city. One of those machines crawls out of the ground and skitters away. That concludes the meeting of Venom and Toxin, but next up, the story is not going to get boring. It's going to get more interesting. I don't want to spoil too much, but have you ever thought about there being another Venom working with Flash? Maybe a young girl that he met in this particular storyline. If you don't already know the answer because you read this way back when it came out 3 or 4 years ago, let me know in the comments down below who you think is going to be a Venom sidekick in the next issue. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see yourself when we air that episode because we do have to go do some Wolverine stuff next week. And don't forget, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Comicstorian. I'll see you next time right here